Welcome to Rewatch-and-Rank. On this channel, we rewatch older TV shows, provide a summary and opinion on the episode before ranking each episode against each other. Today's episode is Bleach, Soul Society, The Rescue Arc, episode 48, Hitsugaya Howls. Episode in a nutshell is a brief reminder of what happened in the episode. So the episode picks up where the last episode left off, with Hitsugaya facing Gin and glancing at Hinamori, who's been knocked out, and noticing that her hands are bloody from gripping her sword so strongly. And he basically tells Gin that in the past he had told him that if he makes Hinamori bleed, then he was going to kill him. And so Hitsugaya and Gin begin their battle. Both of them end up releasing their Shikai. And Hitsugaya's is very cool, being an ice water dragon. And they fight until Matsumoto arrives and intervenes. This lets Gin leave, and then Hitsugaya returns to the 5th squad with Matsumoto. We then learn, as a Hell Butterfly comes to report it to Matsumoto, that Rukia's execution has been moved up, and it is now the next day at noon. And then we see announcements being made throughout Soul Society, the guards informing Rukia of the moved up date. And then we see Ichigo continuing his training while Yoruichi doubts whether or not he's going to be able to complete it in time based on the original timeline. And then Renji appears within the training zone, basically stating that he's mastered materialization and he's going to work on the last little bit left before he can reach Bankai himself, and then informs Ichigo, whose training he's just crashed, of Rukia's moved up date. And this inspires Ichigo to release more spirit force than ever and state that he needs, that if the deadline is tomorrow, then he needs to take care of his training that day. And then the very last scene that we leave the episode on is Rukia laying down in her cell, flashing back to Kaizen, or Kaien Dono, as I think she called him, in the rain, screaming his name. Now that we've been reminded about what happened in the episode, we'll now rank the episode. As always, we'll rank first on the mostly objective ranking list, followed then by the personal ranking list. So I didn't feel that there were any specific negatives in this episode, at least none that hadn't already been addressed in episodes past. So I did not take any negative points. The positive points for this episode, we have the resolved battle between Hitsugaya and Gin, worth 2 points. 3 points for our multi-arc supporting character growth, which is when we learn of Hitsugaya's Shikai, or first release of his Zanpakuto, which is Hyorimaru. Then we had, which is of course, as mentioned, was the ice dragon / water dragon, ice water dragon. And then we have the positive 4 points for our multi-arc main character development, which of course is Rukia's execution date being moved up. And this leads us to 9 points total for this episode. So our mostly objective ranking so far has Flash Goddess Yoruichi Dances in first, followed by the Despicable Shinigami, Ishida, The Utmost Limits of Power. This episode came in 4th, Hitsugaya Howls, Overcome Your Limits, The Avengers, and then in 7th so far we have Authentic Records, School of Shinigami. For my personal ranking for this episode, I did decide to give it a 7 out of 10. The reason I decided to give it a 7 out of 10 is that there was some action with the fight at the start, and Hitsugaya's Shikai was beautiful and epic and looked amazing. So I felt like that was worth a lot of points. With Ichigo's training, at least at the end, it built up excitement because, he started to finally make some progress and release his spirit pressure or power, what have you. However, that being said, there were some boring parts in the episode. There was like a bit of needed exposition from Yoruichi about the progress of Ichigo's training and how she doesn't think that he'll be able to do it, and Yorihara tested the training on himself when he was developing it, and it took him 3 days, and he said Ichigo's potential was higher, but she hasn't noticed any increase in Ichigo's soul power over the last day of training, but how they still have time. But then when Renji arrives, they find out they don't have time, but that is the push that Ichigo needed to raise his spirit pressure. We find out Renji broke out of prison to train his Bankai and specifically sought out where he felt Ichigo's power coming from so that he could inform him about Rukia. Then there's a lot of Rukia kind of laying in the cell and hearing about it and the announcements going off, which isn't really action-based, and frankly speaking, I don't know that we necessarily needed to hear Rukia's execution has been moved up like 5 times in the same episode. I think I figured that out the first time they said it, when she was informed. But I understand that all the other characters had to also be informed individually for it, but I also don't know that, like, at least like with Hitsugaya, that could have potentially happened off screen. With the announcements to all of Soul Society, again, that could have happened off screen. I don't know that I necessarily, as the audience, needed the reminder. Um, so while I liked the episode and I felt that there was a lot of progress made and there was a great fight, I also felt that there were some bits that were a little bit on the boring side, and maybe some things that I felt could have maybe been done off screen instead of boring me. So 7 out of 10 seemed fair. Bringing the personal ranking list to in first, Ishida, The Utmost Limits of Power, The Despicable Shinigami. This episode does come in third for me, Hitsugaya Howls, followed by Flash Goddess Yoruichi Dances, The Avengers, Authentic Records, School of Shinigami, and then in last place for me is Overcome Your Limits. Bringing us now to the final segment, and that is our series ranking so far. On our mostly objective ranking, we have Agent of the Shinigami arc in first at 84%, Soul Society the Sneak Entry arc at 75.24%, Soul Society the Rescue arc is this current arc, and that is currently at 61 out of 220. On the personal ranking side, we have Agent of the Shinigami arc at 63% in first place, Soul Society the Sneak Entry arc in second at 59.52%, and so far Soul Society the Rescue arc has 45 out of a possible 220. But with that, we have now rewatched and ranked Bleach Soul Society the Rescue arc, episode 48, Hitsugaya Howls. Like and subscribe if you'd like to, and I'll see you in the next episode.